When we think about the early Islamic conquests, we often picture epic battles and sweeping victories that changed the course of history. From the sands of Arabia, a new power emerged, reshaping empires that had stood for centuries. But behind the legendary tales of Khalid ibn al-Walid, the Sword of Allah, and the rapid expansion under the first caliphs, lies a more complex story. It's a story not just of military genius, but of profound moral questions that the conquerors themselves had to face. How do you build a just society from the ashes of war? How do you govern people of different faiths and cultures? These weren't just abstract ideas. They were urgent, real-world dilemmas. Let's travel back to the 7th century. The Byzantine and Sasanian empires, two superpowers of their time, were exhausted from decades of war against each other. They were vulnerable. When the Muslim armies arrived, they weren't just met with resistance. In many places, they were seen as a change, sometimes even a welcome one, by populations tired of heavy taxation and religious persecution. But victory on the battlefield was only the first step. The real challenge was what came next. One of the first and biggest moral tests was the treatment of conquered peoples. The Quran provided a framework. People of the book, mainly Christians and Jews, were offered a protected status known as dhimmi. They could practice their own religion, maintain their communities, and live under their own laws in exchange for a special tax, the jizya. This was revolutionary for its time. In an age where conquest usually meant forced conversion or expulsion, this was a form of structured tolerance. But putting this principle into practice wasn't always simple. Imagine being a Muslim commander entering a city like Jerusalem or Damascus. You're responsible for thousands of soldiers and even more civilians. How do you ensure your troops, fresh from battle, treat the local population with respect? The early caliphs, like Umar ibn al-Khattab, issued strict orders. Soldiers were forbidden from looting private property, destroying places of worship, or harming non-combatants. When Caliph Umar famously entered Jerusalem in 637, he made a pact, the Covenant of Umar, guaranteeing the safety of its Christian inhabitants and their holy sites. He even refused to pray inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, worried that future generations of Muslims might try to convert it into a mosque, setting a powerful precedent for coexistence. But was it always this smooth? Of course not. History is never that clean. There were instances of harshness and breaches of these ideals. The jizya tax, while offering protection, could be a heavy burden. Its application varied from region to region and ruler to ruler. Sometimes it was a fair, manageable tax, and other times it was used oppressively. The status of a dhimmi, while protected, still meant being a second-class citizen in the new social order. This created an underlying tension. You were free to worship, but your social mobility and political power were limited. This was the complex reality of building a multi-religious empire. Another huge dilemma was wealth and spoils of war. The conquests brought immense riches into the nascent Islamic state. How do you distribute this wealth fairly? The Quran laid out rules for dividing spoils, with portions for the soldiers, the state, and the needy. But as the empire grew, so did the temptation of luxury and corruption. The early caliphs were known for their simple lifestyles. Caliph Abu Bakr continued to work as a merchant, and Caliph Umar famously lived in a modest home, patching his own clothes. They saw themselves as custodians of the community's wealth, not its owners. They tried to create a system, the Diwan, a register to ensure that stipends and shares of wealth were distributed to the early Muslims and soldiers. But this created its own set of problems. It established a kind of military aristocracy, where early converts and Arab tribesmen got preferential treatment. What about the new converts from Persia or Egypt? Did they get an equal share? This question of economic justice and social equality would become a major source of conflict and internal strife within the Muslim community for decades to come, leading to civil wars or fitnas that threatened to tear the young empire apart. It was a constant struggle to balance the realities of a vast, wealthy empire with the core Islamic values of equality and social justice. Then there was the challenge of governance. How do you run an empire stretching from Spain to India? The early Muslims were brilliant in their pragmatism. Instead of tearing everything down, they often adopted and adapted the existing administrative systems of the Byzantines and Sasanians. They kept the local clerks, the tax collectors, the record keepers. Greek and Persian remained the languages of administration for many years. This was a smart move. It kept the machinery of state running smoothly. But it also created a moral and cultural dilemma. As the Arab conquerors settled in these new lands, they started to adopt the customs, the luxuries, and the courtly life of the empires they had defeated. This led to a deep anxiety among many early Muslims. Were they losing their way? Were they abandoning the simple, pious life of the Prophet and his companions for the decadent trappings of empire? This tension between spiritual purity and worldly power is a central theme in early Islamic history. Scholars and ascetics would constantly call the rulers back to the original principles of Islam, warning against the corrupting influence of wealth and power. This period wasn't about a monolithic and changing set of rules. It was a dynamic, often messy process of figuring things out. The early Muslims were grappling with questions we still struggle with today. How do you balance security with freedom? How do you ensure justice for minorities? How do you prevent wealth from corrupting society? Their answers were imperfect, but they established a foundation that allowed for a vibrant, diverse civilization to flourish for centuries. So, when we look back at the early Islamic victories, it's important to see beyond the battlefield. The true story is in the moral struggles, the ethical debates, and the human effort to build a better society according to their ideals. They were pioneers, not just in military tactics, but in the complex art of state building and governing a diverse world. And the dilemmas they faced, the successes they had, and the failures they encountered continue to echo through history, offering lessons for us all. Thanks for watching, and if you found this interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history.